From the Folger Shakespeare Library, this is Shakespeare Unlimited. I'm Farah Kareem Cooper, the Folger director. In the video game series Grand Theft Auto, you play a criminal in fictionalized versions of real cities. So typically, you do criminal things, like stealing cars, beating people up, or smuggling drugs. But Grand Theft Auto is an open-world game, which means you could choose to do any of those things, or something completely different. You could drive around town all day listening to the radio. Or you could put on a play, which is exactly what the actors Sam Crane and Mark Oosterveen chose to do during the pandemic. Sam's partner, filmmaker Penny Grylls, decided to turn their quest to stage Hamlet inside the game into a documentary. The resulting film, Grand Theft Hamlet, has all the backstage drama of putting on a play in the real world, except they're performing for an audience full of heavily armed, trigger-happy gamers. Here are Penny Grylls and my friend Sam Crane in conversation with Barbara Bogave.
Before we get into the real story, I think you guys better explain how this game works. So, Sam, you were the Grand Theft Auto addict, at least in the beginning, so why don't you do the honors for us?
Okay, so Grand Theft Auto, it's what they call an open world game. So it's basically a kind of recreation of Los Angeles. The city that the game is set in is called Los Santos, which is like this.
Right, this version of
this digital version of Los Angeles. And it's a big map there. It's like you get in there and you can wander around the streets. You can go down to the beach. You can see the pier. In the game, it's like a version of Santa Monica Pier, and it looks the same. And you can walk along the pier and you can go and see all these people wandering around on it. And then you can get in your car and drive up the highway along the side of the ocean. You can actually swim in the ocean. You can go to mountains. You can climb up them. You can go to nightclubs. You can. It's like living a version of a life, but inside a video game. And you're controlling your avatar going around this digital city. And the thing
is, such freedom in the middle of COVID.
That's the thing. It's open world, but it's also online.
Yeah,
so
that's an important thing to say.
And I think that is important because there's two different versions of Grand Theft Auto. There's the story mode, which is when you jump in to this story and then you follow basically a series of like challenges which you have to overcome.
And that's just you playing on your own on your PlayStation.
But the bit that,
but this involves players all over the world.
So they have an online
and people
game. So
jumping on.
You're jumping it and you're with like 30 other people who could be from anywhere in the world.
And you should mention the violence. I mean, this is one. I mean, a lot of video games are violent. Computer games are violent, but this one's particularly violent, and anything can happen at any given moment. Right? Someone can just come up and blow you away.
Absolutely. Because I guess the way people normally play this game is you jump in there and you go and do heists, or some people you just go around and steal cars, shoot people.
And the surprising thing was that I'm a 40-something, old woman, and I'm a mum, and I've never played computer game before. And Sam had been on computer games, but I was always quite disapproving of him and my son as well, who used to play. And, because they were doing this thing and they had this idea for this project, I was like, well, I'm just going to jump in there and join them and see what it's like. And I was expecting to absolutely hate it and not enjoy myself. But within about 30 seconds, I was shooting people and stealing cars. And I was quite shocked.
And we see this.
Yeah.
We see this in the documentary.
Oh my God, who's he?
I'm going to mess you up.
You all right?
Yeah, there's someone just tried to steal my car, so I just kind of killed...
Can't be fair.
I'm a grown, big-ass woman.
Meet you,
you kind of find another version of yourself when you go in there. It's really quite amazing.
I guess you're able to do things that you can't do in real life.
Yeah.
And there's that kind of sense of freedom in that.
Sense of play, actually.
And just one more technical thing so people understand how this all works. The players can talk to each other while they're playing. You can turn on your mic and you're talking to each other. And that's what we hear in the documentary. And we see everything that's happening from the point of view of different players in this documentary. So you're all recording your play. And that's how this that's how this movie, it looks. It's all immersive inside this game.
That's right.
And it switches point of view from player to player. Okay, so Sam, before all of this started, you and your friend Mark, who was also very depressed at this time, third lockdown in COVID lockdown in Britain, and he is not married. He lives alone, and it sounds like the last person in his family had passed away at some point in this period. So he was really down. And I just picture you both playing the game in your respective houses, and Mark sounds like he's just so down because he's all alone and unemployed. Is that pretty much where this started?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's the thing. As sort of difficult as I found it in lockdown and depressing, and particularly for me, it was the professional prospects that I saw disintegrating around me, and also the way I kind of had defined myself. I had my family with me. I had that, my Pinny and our children, and so we had that. Whereas a lot of people, I think that the real struggle was for people who were living on their own, and that kind of real deep loneliness when you're not allowed to go out and socialize in the normal way, and you realize how important that is, especially for people who live on their own. So yeah, he was really struggling.
We were very worried about him. Very worried.
And that comes across in the documentary. So you and he would get together, and you were playing the game, and I think at some point you two were being chased by the cops, and you end up in the game's version of the Hollywood Bowl, which is a big open-air amphitheater. Tell us what happened then.
So often what happens in the game, you end up getting chased by the police. So you get this wanted rating, and you have to run away from them. So we were driving away. Maybe we should get out of the car.
Okay. It's flashing. Yeah, just run up these hills.
Okay. And then we came across, this theatre space, like it's the Hollywood Bowl. And it's interesting because this space is not, as far as I know, it's not used in any of the in-game missions. So it's not somewhere there's a reason for you to go to normally. So we hadn't been there before. Oh, look at this.
Look at what?
Look. It's like a massive kind of arena. Oh my God, this is so cool. It's this like beautifully kind of classical ideal of a theatre. It's like, based on a Greek theatre format with the, outdoor stage and big rakes of seat going up. I wonder if you could actually stage something here.
What, like put on a play?
Yeah. Man, that looks so cool. All right, do something. Do a
what?
No, like a
soliloquy or?
Yeah, it's a bit of Shakespeare. Like as actors, you have little speeches from Shakespeare that you might have auditioned with, or maybe you did at drama school, or maybe you were in a show and you. So I said, just go up, do a speech. And
such a director in you coming out.
Yeah,
the game.
But I just kind of wanted to see it, and he did the bit from Macbeth.
Life's a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
There you go. And it just immediately, watching his avatar kind of stroll around on the stage, deliver this speech, it just, to me, I was like, this really is something. This is so exciting, and it kind of just connects somehow with this Shakespearean language.
It did seem to connect as well, I think, that particular speech from Macbeth, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which is about time and about death and about, the fact that we've got a brief time on the stage. Shakespeare does talk about this in a lot of his plays, actually. He says we're all actors, really, essentially, which I think is very profound. And I think in the context
of
tedium
COVID, too.
Yeah, the tedium and COVID.
And the tedium
and
of
the
COVID,
kind of the heavy awareness of death at that time as well.
I mean, I remember, so when you're playing Grand Theft Auto, there's a kind of ticker tape at the bottom that comes up of so-and-so's died, so-and-so's taken the easy way out, all the different players that have been killed. which is sort of reminiscent of what was happening on the news at the time, which I actually only realised after I edited the film. I was like, well, gosh, there's a real resonance there. But also the Shakespeare itself was, the language was speaking to the situation we were in. And I think that's why, in a funny kind of way, we decided to carry on with what we were doing.
Like I said, yeah, layers and layers and layers. So in that scene, though, in the film, it looks like you immediately invited people playing at the time to a performance. But things go very awry.
Yeah. First of all, I was amazed that anyone turned up. Like, we actually had 2 people who happened to be in the server who actually turned up. That was the first major shock for me.
If I could just request that you refrain from killing each other. And don't kill the actors either. Yeah, start, Mark. You start.
Who's there?
Nay, answer me. Stand and unfold yourself.
Long live the king.
Bernardo?
He.
You come most carefully upon your hour.
'Tis now struck 12. Get thee to bed, Francisco.
For this relief, much thanks. 'Tis bitter cold and I am sick at heart.
Have you had quiet, guard?
Not a mouse stirring.
Well, they also start just wasting everyone on stage.
Yeah.
It's such an
And each other.
auspicious start.
But you
And
recorded
each
that,
other.
and you put it online as a little YouTube video, and everyone just went wild for it, didn't they?
Yeah.
So
But I genuinely was at the time really kind of amazed that people, because before that, the previous time I had performed was just before, as COVID was kind of starting, I was doing this 1-person show. And the audiences were kind of really dwindling. You really felt it.
It was
and
very
I was
depressing.
like, it was really, and I was like, I could end up doing this to no one. So the fact that 2 people actually turned up was amazing.
It gave me a boost.
It gave me a boost. And actually, it did feel like, I felt like that kind of adrenalized rush you get from performing on a real stage. You know, anything could happen now. And especially when they started shooting each other and at us, and then the police turned up. It was kind of electric and incredibly dramatic.
It is incredibly dramatic and very funny and just very improvised. It has that live feeling and there's so little happening in COVID. I can imagine this must have been so exciting. So Penny, this is where you got involved. I imagine, were you a kind of Grand Theft Auto widow at this point? Was Sam just playing all the time a little bit?
Well, I think everyone was online a lot, weren't they? Because there was not much else to do, to be honest. I mean, I was gardening, I was doing things outside because I'm a very virtuous person. But
I like your good-for-nothing husband. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Sitting in a dark room, being depressed in his pants. But
That's British pants, which is like boxer shorts.
I think they call them knickers, don't they?
We call them underpants.
Underpants, sorry.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I was just like, okay, watching what he's doing, and he made this YouTube video, and I was like, my God, that's really, really amazing, actually. And like, it's also observational documentary filmmaking because he's literally recording sort of like what's happening as it's happening, you know. So I was like, well, can I jump in? So I jumped in, and I was like, actually, the thing that I love about this video is its spontaneity, and it's very, very funny, and it's very, very heartfelt, and they're very sincere in what they're trying to do. But I was like, can we up our game? Sorry to use the pun, and actually like make it more cinematic? Because at the moment, the footage was very like a lot of YouTube videos of gaming is, which is very kind of like the camera swinging around, very hectic. And if you're like under 15 years old, you can probably watch that for hours, but I personally can't. And I was like, you know what, I really think we could make a proper like film, like a documentary film with this. And you can basically zoom in and out, and you can frame shots. So you can make like close-ups and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to film these guys. I'm going to film their adventure. I'm going to interview them just like a normal documentary. And I'm just going to go with it and see where it takes us.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, I had no idea this is how the technical side of it worked. And you guys seem to, you make your avatar, Penny, and then you guys just have fun together. It looks, I think you say in the game, this is like a date.
You make me a drink?
If you just come up here.
How do I slap your ass? You really, I quite fancy you, actually.
It's quite romantic up here, don't you think?
Because you see, in the game, unlike in real life, he's like was really rich, and he had all these different apartments and cars and things. So he's able to show off to me a bit. You know, he's like, "Come on, hun, we're going to go for a ride in my amazing car, and we're going to take you to my amazing apartment. We're going to have a pretend whiskey." You know, and there was
Suddenly
even a bed.
You have a very rich husband. That's
yeah, exactly. You had a rich
Imagine.
husband. Yeah, imagine.
And but you two have a very serious conversation too at this point.
Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, not really. No, it's shit. Everything's shit. I have nothing now.
What about that coding course you're doing, though?
Yeah, it's like that government advert they put out with that ballet dance, picture of a ballet dancer, and it says, Fatima is now retraining in tech. And I just see that, and it just is a knife through my heart, because that's me. I am Fatima, and my dreams and Fatima's dreams have been ripped away from them.
Had you had this conversation about really your bad emotional state outside of the game together, or was being in the game that made it possible? And I guess I should ask you, Sam.
Had we had that conversation? I mean, I guess we'd probably had versions of this conversation
several times
for a while, you know, talking about...
Well, he started a coding course, you know, as you hear in the clip.
Yeah.
And I found this actually incredibly depressing, because this was a man who, you know, has spent his whole life on stage at the Globe and then National Theatre, all these amazing places in London and the UK. And, you know, he was quite, you know, high up in his career, well-respected actor. And then he was having to do coding course. And I
was just trying to think of what, you know, it was presuming that we'd never be able to do that.
There's nothing wrong with doing coding course, but it's just that thing of like, then there was this depressing advert, which we talk about, which was like a picture of a ballerina, and it says, you know, Fatima can retrain in tech. And you thought, oh my God. You know?
And it was just sort of symptomatic at the time of what felt like a government attitude to the arts that was like, okay, well, this is an excuse to kind of get everyone, you know, into tech, and then we can kind of manage that better, and it's more economically productive, maybe. But
yeah.
Well, I think what we hear listening or watching this your documentary is we hear just, you know, the emotion and also how the video game kind of allows people to talk maybe in ways that they're not talking in their real lives.
I certainly felt that with Mark, because I felt like, you know, obviously he was going through a particularly difficult time as well. And I guess it's a bit like when you're driving a car and you don't have to look at each other directly. So you're looking at a version of each other, but it sort of allows a certain intimacy, which is interesting.
Honesty, yeah, emotional honesty, maybe, yeah.
I have to ask, since it's a Shakespeare podcast, why Hamlet? I mean, everyone knows Romeo and Juliet, too. I can imagine you could have done that. And it's also full of death and violence, just like Grand Theft Auto. So why Hamlet?
I think there's lots of reasons, some of which were probably more kind of conscious and intentional at the beginning. I think a big one for me was, okay, everyone knows Romeo and Juliet, but I think Hamlet is like the one that's the kind of cultural phenomenon. It's like the most famous bit of literature in the world, probably.
And like, you know, Grand Theft Auto is the most famous computer game. Like, even if you've not heard of like any other video games, you would have heard of that
like
one.
It has this cultural
likewise.
weight. Yeah. And so I think I was looking for something that had that equivalent in that's something that's people watching it could go, oh yeah, I know what Hamlet is, or I think I know what Hamlet is, even if I've never seen it, never read it or anything.
But also what's really interesting is actually, we thought that Los Santos was actually the perfect setting for it, because it is literally the rotten state of Denmark. You know, it is kind of like this very seemingly glamorous, well put together world that actually underneath it all is very violent and bit sort of, there's a dirty underbelly that made that game and that play work really well together. I also think that it's a play about pretending to be something you're not. It's about people putting on masks, about putting plays within plays. And Hamlet is constantly in dialogue with himself about, you know, what am I? What role do I have to play? What is authenticity?
And it's also about watching performance. It's about spectatorship. Hamlet's always going like, I'll tend him to the quick. I'll observe his looks. He's always watching, and then other people are watching him. You have bits where Polonius and Claudius sort of set up this mini play where they bring Ophelia along to interact with Hamlet, and they're watching. So it's almost like Hamlet is a unknowing performer then, but he's also there's this really interesting, I think, connection between performance and spectatorship in playing video games, because when you're playing a video game, you see yourself on the screen, so you're always watching yourself, but you're also like the protagonist of this story as well. So you're both the performer and the spectator at the same time, and I think Hamlet's a bit like that as well.
There are all of these resonances. And then on top of it all, it's hilarious because you're putting on this show live in the video game with all of these people around the world. And you recruit people in Grand Theft Auto to come audition for Hamlet.
Yes.
So the whole time you're trying to make this recruitment video, you're also shooting at assailants with these big automatic weapons. It's really hilarious. And people playing the game do show up at the Vineland Bowl then later to audition in the game. So how did that go?
Well, we didn't expect anyone to turn up, if I'm honest. And at first, it seemed like only one person turned up. That was DJ Phil. And then DJ Phil couldn't do it.
Oh, yeah. And you have to tell us about DJ Phil.
Okay. He looks like a sort of cowboy. Yeah. With a bare chest. So then he descends the stairs and then starts
We're terrified.
And we're terrified because he's been beating people up on the way down. And he says, starts speaking, and it's a woman. It's a woman's voice.
I'm a literary agent and a mum, and I love Hamlet. And it seems like my only opportunity to actually audition for Hamlet at the moment is to jump onto my nephew's GTA.
Oh, wow. It was one of those moments I thought, this could really work.
Was it Hamlet wrong, Laertes? Never Hamlet. If Hamlet from himself be ta'en away, and when he's not himself does wrong Laertes, then Hamlet does it not.
You do end up with some real finds. Someone named Nora gives you a great audition at the Vineland Bowl, and also someone who has a Brooklyn accent and sounds to me like Fran Drescher of The Nanny.
Yes.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night, and for the day confined to fast in fires. Fare thee well at once. The glowworm shows the matin to be near, and gins to pale his uneffectual fire. Adieu, adieu, adieu. Remember me.
Oh my God!
Amazing.
Nice!
Oh my God!
Commit suicide at the end.
Jen Cohn, who is ends up playing Horatio, and actually we find out is a sort of gaming celebrity.
Yeah, she's a voice actor for some big
video
games.
A competitor.
You had some great talent show up. And then there, of course, is Parteb. And he's, half Tunisian and half Finnish?
That's
right. Why don't you describe him and his avatar?
He turns up, he kind of in this massive, like, kind of blingy car, and he gets out, and he's this kind of just like an alien or creature of the sort of the deep sort of thing. And
right, like a green kind of lizardy
person, with a sort of, and he's very much enjoying shaking his booty, as you would say in America, and sort of like being incredibly badly behaved. And anyway, we said, do you want to audition? I don't think he was intending to at all, but we sort of roped him in, and he watched someone else's audition, and he was like, yeah, okay, I'll give it a go. And we said, well, what are you going to do? And he was not familiar with Shakespeare, so he said, can I do a bit of the Quran?
Adios, amigos. Yeah.
Oh, that was beautiful.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
He recited the Quran quite beautifully.
He really did, and it was quite impressive and beautiful. I think that's the moment, actually, when the whole film shifts. I think people have said that to me when they watched that they suddenly realised it's a quite emotional film. I think up until that point, it's very funny, very entertaining, very unexpected. But when that happens, people are like, oh, okay. That's actually
it's
really
true.
interesting.
It is. That is a shift, and it's what makes, I think, your documentary so unique. They're great scenes, and you have these emotional shifts from incredible poignancy and beauty to utter comedy and chaos. So one of the scenes I'm thinking of is you start rehearsing Hamlet early on, and you're doing the soliloquy, I have of late, but wherefore I know not lost all my mirth, on a rooftop. And it's such an appropriate location as that passage contains an extended metaphor of the earth being a sterile promontory and this majestical rock.
My hour is almost come, where I to sulphurous and tormenting flames must render up myself.
My memory, I went through all trivial fond records, all swords of books, all forms of all precious past, that youth, observation, copied there.
Oh, Fred Dog, no, don't kill him. He's that Hamlet. Yo! Ugh.
But then tell us what happens.
I guess someone turn up in a helicopter and start shooting at him, I think.
And kills Hamlet, yeah.
Yeah, and she throws a hand grenade.
Yeah,
which is a bit too early, because Hamlet's supposed to die later, right at the end of the play, of course. But
and also, it's like I mean, it is kind of funny and everything, but we were genuinely we had to kind of time pressure. We're trying to rehearse this play, and it was kind of getting quite frustrating, because if someone would turn up and start shooting people, and then you're like, no, you can't kill, because we're actually trying to do some work.
It was actually incredibly difficult to organise. It was a bit like herding cats. And
worse than cats.
But also because he had all these different people on time
AR-15s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you had all these different people from around the world with different time schedules. The whole thing was, you really went mad with it.
And I'm sure,
you were kind of essentially producing it with Mark.
Anyone listening who's had experience of trying to put on a production of Shakespeare, or maybe like a fringe production or a kind of community production or something, you know how hard it is just gathering people together and
getting
started, and so we kind of had that, but then added to that, random strangers turning up with
trying to kill us.
Rocket propelled grenades as well. So
right, and just like in real life, some of your actors drop out, including the person you cast as your Hamlet, who turns out to be a professional actor. And COVID is lifting at this point in the process, and he's landed a role in a real production. So he tells you in the game. So, Sam, it sounds like in the scene you were trying to convince Mark that you should quit, and Mark got really emotional.
Look, Sam, you've got a wife, you've got kids, you've got other shit going on. I don't have any of those things. I've been sitting at home on my own in lockdown with nothing to do.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
I mean, one of the few things that I've been able to do, that I'm able to occupy my mind with, that's been able to distract me, has been this.
So it was such hard work just trying to get this production going, and there seemed to be so many obstacles. And I think as well, when Dippo said that, obviously we were delighted for him, but
Dippo is your Hamlet.
Yeah, maybe feeling a little bit jealous
of this
and
younger man.
Yeah, who's
who was
like
successful.
Oh, well, we're not getting any job. No one's asking us to do anything.
I think he used the terms, this is not a real job. And I think that really upset Mark, because it felt real to him, because it was the only thing he had in his life at that point. And I don't think we'd quite realised up to that point how important it was to him.
Yeah, so you became Hamlet at this point. Did you do it for you, or did you do it for Mark?
Both, I guess. Yeah, both.
Well, I said to you, look, why don't you just go off and try a few soliloquies in different locations and just try and connect with the text and take that time to make it your own. And I think we ended up in a dive bar, and Sam and Mark were like messing around, and you weren't even thinking about rehearsing, actually. And then all of a sudden you said you just started doing To Be or Not to Be.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them.
There's the cops are here.
And I thought, I thought immediately there was something about the way the non-playable characters, who are just to explain, they are the people that populate the game that are not being played by someone. They're just background characters, NPCs. But they were almost they were watching you do this soliloquy. And of course it was an illusion, but they seemed to be listening.
Who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life? But that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of.
Mm-hmm. And there was this sense that the game was almost listening to us and egging us on and saying, yes, well, maybe we want to have you here. You know, there was a kind of weird magic to it.
There is a weird magic to it because those characters are drunk. They look like career alcoholics, and they're very dislocated and desolate. And the words, that combination of the Hamlet and these characters, it's really haunting. And it kind of, I think it gets to the most poignant aspect of your project, I think, which is theater does so much to us. It reaches so deep. And I'm thinking of another scene very close to this one. At one point, you gather together in a quiet corner of a casino after a rehearsal. And one of your actors, Nora, opens up about their own life and the resonance they feel with Hamlet.
I recently came out as trans to my family, and then, so it's one of them situations like where you realize who the people around you are, but also you're also finding your own truth. That's why I can relate to Hamlet, because he's finding his own truth, but he's also realizing what people are like around him.
That's right. This is somebody who, when she came to audition, she said she hadn't done any Shakespeare since year 9, which I think is when they're about 13, but wanted to be an actor, wanted to try it. And obviously extremely young, only 19, and going through a transition to be, being who she felt she truly was as a woman. And, and it was really interesting because she didn't have any sort of preconceptions about what you should or shouldn't say about Hamlet. And she very much said what she felt, which was about the fact that the people around you want you to be a certain way, but then you feel that you're something different. And I just thought, wow, this is actually why we're doing this, because, people are getting involved, acting, who are not professionals, who are just getting involved, and they are responding to this ancient text in their own way. And it's very accessible.
And giving a perspective, I'd never thought of Hamlet from that perspective before. And it was just really enlightening to me, I think.
Yeah, it gets to not only what gaming can do for you, but what theater can open up for you, and what kind of place it can make for you. Well, finally, the big day comes for your live stream performance. So describe the experience of performing this live. What kind of audience did you have? What was your feeling?
We had a mixture of audiences. We had some avatar audiences.
Yeah, so we had some audience actually in the game with us.
And followed us around like a promenade performance. And then there was a streaming audience on YouTube and Twitch. Everything was being seen from my perspective as the filmmaker. So if I died, that means everybody online wouldn't be able to watch the show anymore. I had to respawn anyway. So that was a bit of a problem.
Yeah, it was a high-pressure situation there.
But, lots of things happen serendipitously. But it was, that's the nature of live performance inside a computer game, which I don't think had ever been done in this way before.
Yeah, there was that constant, threat that everything would kind of collapse into chaos. And I think that, again, it's exciting, that. And, because you get
very much like real theater.
Yeah, because you have a version of that in any play. That's the thing about doing live performance, is that it's, there's always, you have a plan, you've rehearsed, you have your script and everything, but there's always a chance it could go terribly wrong, or anything could happen. And that's what gives it the kind of frisson, the buzz.
I watched your film at a screening in Los Angeles very early on, and the audience really loved it. And some woman sitting in front of me actually stood up at the end and turned around, and I didn't know her, asked me if I also felt that this was the future of the whole industry, like it was a whole new paradigm.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I mean, okay, so this is really interesting because obviously what we made was called machinima. That's the name of it, which is a combination of machine and cinema. And it's actually a genre which has been around for about 20 years. And it's basically making films inside computer games. But we didn't know anything about this when we started making this film. We just were doing what we were doing, right? We were just solving problems within the context of where we were at. But we later discovered like there was all these other artists, filmmakers, but also there's a collective called Total Refusal. They made a film in Red Dead Redemption, which is called Hardly Working, and that won the European Film Awards. So it is a growing genre, and it's really interesting because it's, more and more people are spending time online inside games, and they have avatars, they have digital presences. So telling stories in the places where people are hanging out a lot of the time is kind of important, I think, for documentary in particular.
I have to ask you, Sam, you already said that Nora's insight really changed how you were thinking about Hamlet, but has this whole experience given you new and different insights into the play?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, as I said, these kind of connections that came up that I hadn't really realized before when we decided to do it, like this whole thing about, I hadn't really thought about Hamlet being someone who's watching everyone going around playing, and that's what you're doing in a video game, isn't it? And this whole kind of connection to playing, and the play's the thing, and and these are actions that a man might play, and
be the players ready.
Yeah, all that kind of viewpoint he has on humans as people playing, and and that difference between really feeling something or really being something and a kind of playful presentation of it. That all just came out so much more strongly and in so much more richly, seeing it through the lens of this game.
And Penny, were you into Shakespeare that much before this?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm so lucky in that my mum was a theatre designer, and she designed a few Shakespeare plays when I was growing up. And so I spent a lot of time around that culture. I guess if you are from the UK as well, it's so much part of our heritage. It's like you have to learn about it, at least, I think, 2 or 3 plays at school. So
you can't avoid it. Yeah.
But I think as well, like the way you kind of learn about it here often is like as this high point of culture, and it's like this thing it is very elevated in culture. And I think that's not always a very helpful way to look at it, because that's not really what it was about in its origin. It was very much a kind of popular entertainment, very cheap for the people. And I guess that's something else that I think we discovered through this game as a kind of route back to that.
Right. We see a lot of headlines these days about how if Shakespeare were alive today, he'd be writing for video games.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I think so. I mean, there is this big kind of connection between, plays and games, and, it makes sense. It's like, yeah.
He'd certainly be poking at the edge of reality.
And he'd be doing something for mass audiences.
Sam, Penny, thank you so much for this. This was great.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. It's been great to chat to you.
Yeah, really nice. Thanks so much for inviting us.
That was Sam Crane and Penny Grylls, interviewed by Barbara Bogave. Grand Theft Hamlet is streaming now on Mubi. This episode was produced by Matt Frasica. Garland Scott is the executive producer. It was edited by Gail Kern-Pastor. We had technical help from Daniel Gordon in London and Voice Tracks West in Studio City, California. Our web producer is Paula Garcia Acuna. Leonor Fernandez edits our transcripts. Final mixing services provided by Clean Cuts at 3Cs Inc. If you're a fan of Shakespeare Unlimited, please leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love to hear from you. While you're there, be sure to hit follow so you get new episodes as soon as they come out. Shakespeare Unlimited comes to you from the Folger Shakespeare Library. Home to the world's largest Shakespeare collection, the Folger is dedicated to advancing knowledge and the arts. When you're in Washington, D.C., come visit the Folger on Capitol Hill. See a play in our theater, or come face-to-face with a Shakespeare First Folio in our exhibition halls. Or enjoy our Quill and Crumb Cafe. We'd love to see you. For more information, visit our website, folger.edu. Until next time, thanks for listening.